Everyone ignored the homeless girl. Until a little boy stopped ****. The rain had not stopped for 3 days, and still, no one saw her. She sat curled against the cold brick wall outside the train station, knees pulled to her chest, a torn blanket draped over her thin shoulders, while hundreds of people walked past her every single hour without a single glance. Her name was Seela, and she was only 9 years old, yet she had already learned the hardest lesson life could teach, that to the world, invisible people don't need to be seen. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet power of a single small act to change everything, hit that like button, drop a comment below, share this story with someone who needs it, and subscribe to Hope and Wisdom, because what happens next will remind you why compassion still matters. Seela had once had a home. She remembered her mother's laugh, the smell of bread baking on Sunday mornings, and a small yellow room with stars painted on the ceiling. But 6 months ago, everything collapsed. Her mother fell sick and never recovered, and with no other family to turn to, Seela found herself on the streets, learning to survive in a world that seemed determined to look away. She learned which alleys were safest to sleep in, which shopkeepers would shoo her off without a word, and which strangers would toss coins without ever meeting her eyes. She stopped expecting kindness. She stopped expecting anything at all. Every morning, the same crowd rushed past her corner, businessmen glued to their phones, mothers pulling children quickly by the hand, teenagers laughing about things that no longer mattered to her. Seela would hold out a paper cup, not even daring to hope, because hope had betrayed her too many times already. Some days she got a few coins. Most days she got nothing but averted eyes and quickened footsteps, as if her very presence were something shameful, something to be stepped around like a puddle on the sidewalk. Then, on a gray Tuesday afternoon, a small boy named Wesley was walking to school with his grandmother, his backpack bouncing against him with every step. He was 7 years old, with messy brown hair and a gap-toothed smile, the kind of boy who still believed the world was fundamentally good because no one had yet taught him otherwise. As they passed the train station, Wesley's steps slowed. He noticed the little girl sitting against the wall, shivering, her eyes fixed on the ground as if she had trained herself not to look up anymore. While every adult around them hurried past, Wesley stopped completely. His grandmother tugged gently at his hand, telling him they would be late, but Wesley did not move. He stared at Seela for a long moment, and something in his young heart refused to let this feel normal. He asked his grandmother why the girl was sitting in the rain all alone, why nobody was helping her, why everyone was just walking by. His grandmother, caught off guard, did not have an easy answer. Children have a way of asking the questions adults have long since stopped asking themselves. Without waiting for permission, Wesley reached into his backpack and pulled out his lunch, a peanut butter sandwich his mother had packed that morning, a small red apple, and a juice box. He walked over to Seela, crouched down so he was at her eye level, something no adult had bothered to do in months, and held out the food with both hands. He told her, simply, that she looked hungry, and that she could have his lunch because he wasn't that hungry anyway. Seela stared at him, stunned, unsure at first whether this was real or another cruel trick her tired mind was playing on her. But his eyes held nothing but innocent, uncomplicated kindness, and slowly, cautiously, she took the sandwich from his hands. That single moment cracked something open in her chest that had been sealed shut for months. Tears she had refused to let fall in front of strangers finally slipped down her cheeks, not from sadness, but from the shock of being seen. Wesley did not flinch or step back. Instead, he sat down right beside her on the wet pavement, ignoring his grandmother's soft protests about his uniform getting dirty, and simply kept her company while she ate. Word of the small boy who sat with the homeless girl spread quickly through the neighborhood, carried first by his grandmother, then by a shopkeeper who had watched the entire scene unfold from his window, moved nearly to tears himself. Slowly, cautiously, things began to shift. A woman who ran a small bakery nearby started leaving warm bread at the corner each morning. A retired teacher began stopping by to talk with Seela, eventually helping her enroll in a shelter program with schooling. None of it happened overnight, and Sela's road was still long and uncertain, but for the first time in half a year, she was no longer invisible. She had a name people used. She had eyes that met hers instead of sliding away. Months later, Wesley and his grandmother still visited her every week, and Sela, now living in a small transitional home with warm meals and a real bed, would light up the moment she saw his familiar gap-toothed grin rounding the corner. She often told the shelter workers that it wasn't the food that saved her that day. It was being looked at like she still mattered. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and share it with someone who might need a reminder that kindness still exists in this world. Before we go, I have one small request. Please type, "I see you," in the comments below, as a quiet promise to never walk past someone the way the world once walked past Sela. Because sometimes, it doesn't take a grown adult with resources or power to change a life. Sometimes, all it takes is a child brave enough to stop, kind enough to share, and human enough to simply see another person when everyone else has chosen to look away.